Welcome to the Neophyte in the Woods podcast with Andrew McDowell.
Thank you again for joining us on the Neophyte in the Woods podcast, a podcast of the Change Your POV network. Today, I'm joined by Jim Lacefield, who is an Army veteran and an avid hunter. Jim, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Hey, no problem. Great for having you.
We've been planning this for about a month and a half at this point, maybe even two. So I'm excited to finally get down to it. So why don't we start today letting the audience know a little bit about you? I mentioned that you're prior service Army. Tell us who you are, where you came from, and how you got into the sport.
Sure. I'm a 23-year National Guard veteran. Couple deployments, one in '03 and again in 2009. I got my bachelor's degree in forestry in 1994 from UMass Amherst. Always loved the outdoors. Back then, a lot of camping and hiking. Definitely into fishing and ice fishing and all of that. Never really got into the firearms and hunting thing until about 2012. After I got back from my second deployment, looking to spend more time with my son really is what got me into the hunting thing. He was really kind of begging me to go, and I took the safety course in 2013, and off we went.
That's great. That's sort of the same time frame I got into this too. So where I think you have probably more success than I do at this point, but we're kind of in the same kind of time period in terms of getting into hunting and really diving deep in.
Yep.
Now, did you start off like going out in the woods and slaying deer, or did you kind of have a build-in process? You mentioned you started off wanting to do this, to spend more time with your son. Was that kind of the genus, or did you start like, a lot of folks do hunting, pheasant or grouse or something like that, and then, build into deer hunting, or was it kind of a combination of the two?
I jumped into the hunting thing kind of with both feet, but starting actually in a spring season in 2013 with turkey, and didn't even hear a gobble.
Yep.
The 3 days I spent out there with my son, but we learned a lot and had some fun out in the woods, and I kind of used that as a catalyst for teaching him woodsmanship, how to shoot an azimuth, how to, I was actually happy the first time I took him because he was able to use the compass and find his way back to the truck. So we kind of set our expectations. We didn't go out there expecting to harvest a bird the first time. It was just more spending time in the woods and learning how to spend a day in the woods because he was only 12 at the time. And then we kind of worked it in. The next fall we started getting into small game, squirrel season, and just kind of pushing stock pheasant fields, and didn't have a heck of a lot of success. Anything we learned something. That's the way we always looked at it. And it took me the next season to get a deer. Actually, it was a whole season without getting a deer. I hunted with some Army buddies, but again, it was setting those expectations. I put in my head that if I see a deer get harvested in a group, I'll watch somebody field dress it. I learned something.
Yep.
So I always managed my expectations that way.
And I think that's the most healthy way to look at it. In my experience, I've shot at a deer. I've never shot one myself, but I was sitting next to a buddy of mine when he shot a beautiful, I think it was a 6 point, 2, 3.5 year old buck. And
Yeah.
it was great. He grew up hunting, and then he got back from his final deployment. He was in the Marines, and came back and was kind of casting around for something to do, and he really got into it. And it's been, I think, therapeutic for everybody involved. I mean, the best day in the woods beats the hell out of being in the office, right? But you're off.
With me, it's more just being out there with the wife and son, and the
Yep,
wife kind of joined in too. Once she kind of really saw what was going on and how much it meant, to my son and I.
that's awesome. I'm working on my wife. I got her fishing, but I think that the hunting thing is a might be a bridge too far at this point.
Yeah, and it's something I didn't push her on,
Hmm.
but she used. We live in Massachusetts, and she used the Becoming an Outdoor Woman program
Yep.
with the mass fishing game, and I cannot say enough for that program. It was a seminar that she went to. Pretty easy stuff. They did a quick marksmanship test with her that she honestly didn't do too well with, so she was a little upset. So I spent, and it was a good time for me and her because I spent 3 trips to the range with her to kind of get her used to that 20 gauge and get it dialed in. Because she was flinching pretty bad.
Sure.
But she kind of had to go back and show them that she knew how to shoot, and she did real well.
Mhm.
And they put a deer in front of her, and she harvested it.
That's
So
awesome.
she did a fantastic job. She loved it.
Now, Jim, what part of the state are you in?
I'm in the northeast corner of the state, but I hunt as a National Guard guy. I hunt Fort Devens and Shirley area
Oh,
a
nice.
lot. Yep.
Terrific. Yeah, that's growing up. My uncle was a avid hunter, and he always talked about could never obviously get onto the base, but kind of the areas around it, he'd go and pull deer out, and he always raved about the forest up there and just the quality of the wildlife that you don't see. I mean, he grew up in Watertown and lived in Natick, so he kind
Right.
of went all over the place doing it.
Yeah, with the oxbow right there, it's quite a nice area to hunt in.
Absolutely. And so you got a deer your second year out.
Correct. Yep.
Have you had more luck with turkey and upland game since then, or have you still kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of once I got the deer, I kind of focused my attention on the wife and getting my son a deer.
Mhm.
I spent time in the woods, obviously, but he was under 15, and in Mass, it's different than other states. He can't hunt on his own license until he's 15, so he was hunting with my gun. That's how it works in Mass. We can only hunt with one gun between the two of us, so my primary focus went to him.
Sure.
With squirrel hunting and all that. But we finally got him a deer this last fall. He turned 15 right before the season, and he had his own gun, and we got him a deer this
That's
last
awesome.
fall.
Congratulations. That's a huge achievement.
Yeah, but it was like a 2-year time frame where most of my focus was him with the gun and me taking him out there because
Yep.
we could only use the one.
Yeah, and that can work to your advantage, especially in like turkey calling and stuff like that. If you're back, I don't know if you can split up from him at all, or if you have to be right there with him. But
Yeah, you got to be pretty in direct control, is what
Okay.
it says. Yeah, you got to be right there with him. Yeah.
But this year, this fall, if
Yeah.
you guys
Oh
go out
yeah.
together, that'll be great.
Yep. Absolutely.
That'll be terrific. So let me ask you. I'm a Geardo. What shotgun, black powder? What were you using when you got your first deer, and then when your son got his this year? Or
We're big fans of the bread and butter shotguns for hunting. I would say Mossberg 500 is what we use because they're inexpensive and they do it all.
Yeah.
I have quote unquote nicer guns in the safe.
Yep.
But I tend not to take those hunting, especially for small game when you're pushing thickets and thick brush patches and stuff. I find myself, if I got the heirloom gun out there, I'm more worried about dings and scratches on the furniture.
Yep.
Honestly, so I actually prefer to take the take the crappy old gun. I find myself a better hunter when I take the junk.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the exact same way. I hunt with a 870, and it does a little bit of everything. I think it paid, including taxes, $300 for it.
Yeah, and we're the same way. Hunting guns, they don't need to be beautiful. They just need to get the job done.
Yep.
And any bread and butter pump gun, especially in Massachusetts, you can legally and successfully hunt any game animal in Mass during the seasons with one gun, and that's what I find is really cool about using that shotgun.
Yeah, I mean it's a it's not a unitasker. It's not the the 338 Lapua that's going to blow a deer apart. It's it's going to do whatever you need it to do, exactly what you need it to do. And
Yep.
in Massachusetts, at least in my experience, the shots that you take are if you have a 50-yard shot, it's unusual.
Every deer I've ever seen taken in our family has been within 30 yards, 35 yards, because the woods are thick in New England. So shotgun, it really does it all,
And up in Maine, I have a buddy who hunts up there, and he uses a guide gun in 35 Remington or something like that, and it's perfect for the terrain, but it's fun to let the environment dictate your choice.
Right, exactly. If you're hunting a cornfield that's a couple hundred yards long, up there you're going to probably bring a rifle, but down here in Mass, it's a shotgun state.
Yeah, and I think that's for better or for worse. I think it adds to the challenge. I shoot open sights when I'm out deer hunting with the shotgun, so definitely you have to steady yourself maybe a little bit more than if you were using a rifled barrel or something like that with a cantilever and a scope up on it. But it adds to the challenge, right? I mean,
it does, and I'll say, we hunt. It's so similar. It's almost uncanny. I use open sights as well.
Yep.
But again, I tailor it to the type of hunting. The guys that taught me how to deer hunt, we drive deer, and in Massachusetts, it's perfectly legal to do that. I've had conversations with some hunters that think that's it's not proper to drive deer, but I look at it's a group effort. It's a bunch of guys that get together every year, and we work together to put meat in the freezer, and if it's legal to do it, we do it. But when you're shooting a moving deer, when you're targeting a moving deer, open sights, in my opinion, are better because you get a better field of view once you're in with the scope. It limits your field a little bit, and it makes it actually a tougher shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I worry about I hunt about 164 acres down in Hopkinton, and I worry about getting sucked into the sight and or into the scope and being broadly aware of what's around me. But there are houses that are 500 yards from where I set up in the woods, so I don't want to get sucked into the scope and think I have clear behind me, but really have somebody's bedroom window. I mean, that's with an open sight, I don't have that problem because I shoot both eyes open until the very last second when I'm going to break the shot and double check everything.
Yep. So you tailor your sights to the type of hunting you do.
Exactly. And I mean, is it the same for you when you're out, chasing squirrels or jackrabbits or something like that up here?
Once we get into I'm a shotgun guy for small game as well, squirrels and snowshoe hare, and we do that. To me, it's the most successful. And I've always been a safe hunter, and I tend not to think launching a 22 bullet up in the air at a squirrel is a good idea.
Yep.
In densely populated areas around Massachusetts, but a shotgun, yeah, absolutely. I shoot right up into the trees with it and had great success.
And I think that's, I mean, for me, one of my goals this year is to just be out in the woods more, regardless of if what I'm hunting. And I think that, I've never really hunted squirrel. I never really thought very much about it, but like so much in life, I got inspired by something I saw on TV, and now I'm just thinking about it constantly. It's
the most fun I have hunting, honestly, because you can make a 1 hour trip out of it. You can just go down the road to a WMA. You can go in there for an hour and harvest a couple squirrels. It's not like a deer trip where you're planning on the whole day with the guys and all that. You can just throw some shells in your pocket and grab the shotgun and head on out and be gone for an hour and a half, and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, so in terms of and this is purely me just trying to get information from you about how you approach it, in terms of choke and load, is it a mod choke and high sevens or? That's one there. You'll hear a lot of different guys with a lot of different stories
about that. You get the guys that think a 12 gauge is going to blow up a squirrel. We do hunt them with 12 gauges, and I actually use a full choke and number 4 high brass on squirrels. And this is the reason why I can reach the top of any oak tree in New England with that setup. If they're in close, you get a squirrel that's kind of, scooting by at 20, 30 yards, you either pass on him and kind of stalk him and wait till he goes up a tree, or you lead off. You got to know your gun to use that kind of a horsepower setup. But I find I'm more successful that way with it. If you get a squirrel that's treed up there at 50 yards up into a tree, 40, 50 yards, you can still touch them.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you I know some folk who hunt squirrel with dogs. You just go out, use your eyes and ears, and go it that way.
I just use the eyes and ears right now. And it works great. We did pick up a coonhound back in the spring that we're kind of working on right now to see if he can sniff out squirrels and see what happens. Just I'm curious. He's been a great dog, and we'll try him out this fall and see what happens.
That's great. That's really cool. What's the dog's name? I'm
Hubert.
Hubert. That's a great name for
Hubert,
a dog.
yeah. Yeah.
I personally am a big fan of human names for animals. I have a cat who's a better hunter than I am. His name is Nelson.
Wow. Yeah.
So, it works out. I want to get a dog. I want to name him Norman. So
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. Once I convince my wife that a hunting dog is a good idea, I think that's what's going to happen.
They're a lot of work and effort, and you just kind of see what happens,
Yeah, exactly. And it's rewarding. I love pheasant hunting. That's what got me into it more than any other species. And just watching dogs work is just endlessly entertaining for me.
It's just the whole partnership with it and all that, and I've actually, even with the bit of success we've had with deer and now turkey and all that, my absolute favorite is snowshoe hare hunting in Maine. Over the beagles. That is just an absolute hoot to watch those dogs, how hard they work. It's just a total blast.
And is the snowshoe hare, you gotta be, quick up and on the trigger, or do you have a little bit of time to plan like you do with some others?
You can get it either way. We've had some, they come scooting by and all you see is a flicker, and you don't even have time to shoulder the gun. And sometimes they come out of a little pocket in the woods and they just stare at you. So it depends. That's what kind of makes it fun. You got to be ready, ready for anything. But knowing that they're, between 30 and 100 yards in front of the dogs, if you hear the dogs getting close, you got time to get the gun, get up and on your shoulder and get the finger on the safety and get things ready. So it's exciting.
What's your, we've talked about a couple of different species and a couple of different sports, ways of hunting. Do you have a favorite either species or method of hunting?
I'd say snowshoe hare is my favorite. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's because it's a social thing. You don't have to be super quiet when you're out there. You can kind of shoot the breeze with the guys and and do that little bit of nudging and ball breaking a little bit here and there. It's kind of and you're not scaring anything away because they're getting pushed by those dogs no matter what. So it's a big it's more of a social thing. And you get some meat out of it and you get some hunting done. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. That sounds like dove hunting down in the American South, where it's 10 guys in a field just waiting for whatever to show up and breaking balls and smoking cigars and having a good old time. All right, well, that just went on my list of things to do now too. Thanks.
I got some great tips for you for a guide to use up there. He's a veteran-friendly guy. He's awesome. So
that'd be great. Yeah, I would love that. And actually, if you give it to me, I'll throw in the show notes for this, and we'll see if we can't drum up some business.
Okay, so I can do that on your podcast?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. It's Pine Grove Lodge,
okay.
And the guy that owns this name is Bob Howe, and he takes over 300 veterans hunting for free every year. He has companies that pay their flights and all that, and he gets them rotated into his snowshoe hare hunts and fishing trips and everything else. So he's a fantastic guy.
That's awesome. And that's I always say one of the things when I win Powerball, I'm going to do a couple of things, and some of them will be irresponsible and some of them won't. But I want to buy like 600 acres of like prime New England forest.
Yep.
And obviously, open it up to all my friends and, anybody that, wants to come out and hunt and, who I know and trust, but start something like that. I know there's a group called Homefront Fishing down in Texas, and they take active duty and veterans out, just fishing on a beautiful bass boat. They have access. They're down outside of Fort Hood, I think. But, I would love to do something like that up here and really open it up, to veterans and the wider community. I think that would be awesome. But
sounds awesome.
That's a pipe dream at this point because Powerball just won't listen to me. I mean, just pull my numbers, man. This shit ain't hard.
I'm gonna do lots of good stuff with it. Yeah.
Exactly. Doesn't the universe owe us a living or something like that? So, I want to ask you a couple of more questions. One of them, do you have a favorite hunting memory? Obviously, you got your boy a couple of deer now. Are those your favorite memories, or do you have one?
Yeah, I'd say that it's a tie. It's my son's deer last fall, and also the phone call I got from my wife when she harvested her deer with the bow program. She called me. It was like 20 after 7 in the morning, so it was only maybe 15 minutes after first shooting light. and I thought she was going to call me because complaining how bored she was or whatever, and I could just tell in her voice she couldn't even speak. I knew she got one. I knew she got one just by the sound in her voice. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, she actually her first day hunting deer. 15 minutes after legal shooting time, a buck come running up the trail, and she got it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What were the facts and figures on the buck in terms of?
It was 138 pounds dressed, and it had an atypical rack. Its left hand antler actually got damaged early in the season, so it actually grew down, kind of on the side of its face. It was really a cool looking rack on it.
That's really cool. And,
yeah.
And your son's deer, like what was the scenario around that one?
His was it was driving deer. Yep. At Devon's. And one thing that's cool about the guys I hunt with, they always try to get the kids in the prime spots. So we found a bend in a fence line, kind of set him up on that where we could kind of funnel the deer in and push them for him. And he had a 90-pound doe came out right in front of him, and he tapped it, so it came out perfect.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's really cool. Those are great stories.
Yep.
So the next question I want to talk about, and maybe we can spend a little bit of time going into this, is in terms of we touched on small game hunting. In terms of like the key skills or the best advice you'd give somebody who's just getting started out there, what
Yep.
would it be and why is it important?
As far as getting into small game hunting, I would say it's for the kids. Even if you're an adult, you can do this. But obviously, if you want to have some good success rate and you want to get your feet wet in that taking food from the woods,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean. That's my opinion. That's the perfect way to do it. You're not sitting out, freezing cold in a deer stand all day. You're not just hoping that something happens. The success rate's pretty high with squirrel, and definitely take advantage of it. And my son absolutely loved it. Figuring that whole thing out, and it's a way to teach that woodsmanship I talked about, like, using a compass and all that. So set the stand, set the expectations low at first, but teach them to look for sign. I mean, squirrel do leave sign. You got to find those oak stands, those hickory stands, and I taught them to look on the ground. You got to find those chewed up. If you find freshly chewed acorns and stuff, this is where we want to sit, and wait. So you kind of get the kid in tune with the woods and what you're looking for, and it's a fantastic thing when it all kind of works out.
That's great. How do you? So I know that a lot of kids these days are a little bit, I'm going to call them high speed. Like, how do you get kids to slow down, or how did you get your son to slow down and really move slow and silent and really take everything in versus being sucked into your phone or wanting to go?
He was 12 and 13 the first few times we did it, and that took a while. We weren't really super successful the first few times I took him at that age because, to coin a phrase from my friend, an 11-year-old's like dragging a red wagon through the woods. You know what I mean? They just kind of make the noise no matter what. But you can still have success with that by letting the woods, what I call, calm down. Even if you make a lot of noise getting into your spot, squirrels aren't that bright, obviously. So once you sit down, give it 20, 30 minutes, and things will kind of calm down for you, and they'll come back around. But it's a good way to teach them that movement. Sliding your feet under the sticks, and pick the quietest route, not the shortest route. Sometimes you look at the ground, and I want to go from here to there, but over there is softer, mossy ground. I want to walk over there because it's quieter. You know what I mean? So it's a great way to teach them that.
Yeah, that's and that's something that I certainly still struggle with. I'm a little bit, I'd say, probably too direct in my problem solving a lot of times. So
right,
and the times where I personally try to embrace the longer, slower, quieter route, I've almost always fallen into a stream and just spent the rest of the day freezing.
That's part of it too.
Yep. Yeah, learning that balance and how to walk through deep water is an adventure.
Yes, it is.
At the best of times, and more so when it's 32 degrees and you're trying really hard not to get wet.
Yep. But I'd say that the most fun we've had with together is the squirrel thing, the small game thing. We'll get a few, and then we'll pick a recipe out together. You know what I mean, and kind of make something together, and it just all works out. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun.
Do you have a favorite squirrel recipe that you want to share?
There's this guy. My brother-in-law bought me a book and introduced him. His name is Hank Shaw.
Okay.
he wrote a book, Buck Moose, which is a fantastic cookbook for deer and that kind of stuff. But he has some recipes online, and it was actually a Portuguese style stew made out of squirrel, and the stuff was fantastic. So if you're looking for recipes, for game, check out Hank Shaw. He's got a lot of great stuff.
Okay, I'm buying the book literally right now as we speak because
Buck Moose is the name of it. It's a fantastic book. Yep,
that's great. That's awesome. So one other thing that we want to talk about, and we touched on it before, kind of briefly talking about shotguns, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to get out into the woods and have success. We talked
definitely do not. Yep.
Talk about sub $300 shotguns killing deer and anything else in the woods that you want to do. I kind of feel the same about the clothes you wear. Not so much my base layer, because I feel like that's
right. That's where the money's at, is in the base layer, and you can get a good base layer for $30 on sale in the spring. And I've bantered back and forth with this one, with a few people about the whole camouflage thing in the orange. I will vouch for the fact that if you sit still, driven deer will not see you. They won't. I had already tagged a doe 3 years ago, my first deer, and I was still hunting a few days later, so I could only take antlered deer. We were driving deer, and honest to God, I had 3 does walk within arm's reach. I could have poked them with the muzzle of my muzzleloader. And I was wearing blue jeans and a green sweatshirt and an orange vest. Just sitting there still. So the whole thing with the $400, $500, $600 in camouflage, I've been using the same coveralls for a decade for ice fishing and hunting. It's just a set of Dickies coveralls that I wear out in the woods, and it works.
Now, the blue jeans thing actually surprises me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've always heard that deer can pick up on blue because of the way it transmits ultraviolet light so much better than if you were wearing, you said you were in a green sweatshirt, than like a green sweatshirt or something more neutral toned.
Yep. I was sitting on a log wearing that, and they honestly trotted. I could have poked them with the muzzle of the muzzleloader. Couldn't take a shot because they were all does.
So the $3,000 Sitka gear camouflage, not really.
Yeah, I mean, for whitetail deer, I'm going to say not necessary. And my wife, when she harvested hers, she was wearing a pair of surplus Gore-Tex pants. They were camouflage, but she had on a gray Arbitech sweatshirt and an orange vest. It was gray. and the thing never saw her. It was 30 yards from her, never saw her.
Now, I know you mostly drive, you've had a lot of success driving deer. Do you do a lot of scent control when you're still hunting, or
none at all? Yeah, none at all. It's a matter of just knowing the patterns. If they're used to walking down that trail, once you find those little highways, I call them, going through the woods, if you get near those, just hunker down and stay still. I think you're good to go. But I'm not a trophy buck hunter. I will say that. I do kind of pay attention to the guys that are after the big ones, the 150, 160, 170-pound deer. They got old for a reason. They're smart, That's so. If you're hunting for the freezer, the whole scent control thing, I don't think it's really, it's not really helping you out. I don't think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've certainly encountered deer in the woods, and I would say 75% of my encounters. My wife and I used to live in Framingham, and there's a big state park there called Callahan State Park.
Yep.
And we were at the time doing Spartan races. I was not as massively fat as I am right now, but we'd be running and working up a pretty good sweat. And I think I literally almost ran into 7 or 8 deer over the course of a summer there. At the end of runs. So I'm a big dude, so I get sweaty as hell and pretty rank, and they had no idea up until.
Yeah, I think if your average deer, I don't think they're really paying that much attention to it. I really don't, just from my personal experience and getting as close as I've gotten to them. But I'd say for a new hunter, once you get into the shotgun for $250, $300 for a good pump gun, just buy some surplus clothes. Just wear dark clothes. It all works.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, for me at least, what I've seen is it's more about breaking up the silhouette than any particular pattern. There's mossy oak people, there's real tree, break up infinity, whatever. When I was buying my camouflage, we knew when I was buying it, I was visiting a buddy down in North Carolina, and we knew we were going to be really close to the deer, and the deer were relatively pressured. So I did want to get something to break me up a little bit more.
Right.
But, I'm wearing one brand on my pants, one brand on my hoodie, one brand on my jacket, and I think, my boots are yet another brand. I mean,
Right.
it's nice to match. It makes you look really cool.
It makes you look good for pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I just go with older clothes because they're gonna get messed up.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out there, I don't spend a ton of money on it. I really, in the almost 6 years I've been hunting, I'm still on the same stuff that I had. I mean, it's basically just clothes I used to wear ice fishing that I'm wearing. I haven't really bought any new outdoor gear at all. I just go with what I got.
Do you have a favorite piece of outdoor gear that isn't clothing or a gun?
Outdoor gear that's not clothing or a gun. Boy, oh boy. I'd have to say a cheap ground blind, believe it or not, for turkey season.
Yep.
Buy them at the end of the year. Dick's or any of those places have them. I spent $20 on the thing, and that's what I used this last spring to harvest the turkey. Because you don't have to sit so still. You can kind of, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I was actually in the blind with a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Just sitting there. And it's dark in there, and the turkeys can't see you, so it's a little more comfortable.
Yep.
But yeah, I spent $20 on that thing a few years ago, and it's been worth it.
That's great.
Yep.
And I think there's was it a doghouse blind or was it one of the kind of the net ones that go around you?
No, it was one of the. It's like it's like a pop up when you just throw it out there and it just goes boop. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It takes 2 seconds to set it up, which worked in our favor as well for that hunt because we kind of got to drive it around the back roads and you just shut the truck off and make a call.
Yep.
And we waited until we heard an answer. So we're actually covering more ground that way. And then it was just one of those things where you can quickly hide the truck, throw the blind out there and 2 decoys and jump in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a technique that really worked for us if you're in areas, because I was hunting Devons again. So you got all those tank trails and stuff out there. You can kind of, drive a quarter mile, stop, make a call, you know what I mean, see what answers. And once you hear something, then you hide the truck and throw that thing out there quick.
Now, is Devons considered public land or do you need permission to get on it?
You need permission to get on it, which is easy to get as long as you have a military ID.
Yep.
Or a retired ID, you're good to go. You just got to contact range control, or swing by range control and talk to those guys, and they'll get you on the list. It's pretty easy.
That's great.
Yep.
I know folks who are down around Joint Base Cape Cod, the old Otis property, and hunting there is a little bit trickier. Obviously, it's still an active base. And
yes, Devons is too. They're actually using South Post where all the ranges are.
Are they really?
Yep, that's where you hunt in over there. Yeah, the whole South Coast area.
That's interesting. And they don't have problems with folks bringing shotguns on the property?
No, because like I said, you're vetted because you have to have a retired ID or an active ID.
Mm-hmm.
And they spread everybody out. It's quite controlled. They give you a training area, so they only let 5 or 6 people per area. So it's not like everybody jumps on the same spot. They've been doing it for decades, obviously, and they've never had an accident there. They're quite safe with the whole thing.
That's great. That's great. It probably keeps the pressure down on the deer a little bit. And
they hunt they allow 4 days of deer hunt a year there.
Oh wow!
So the deer get zero pressure. So it's quite a successful trip down there usually.
That's great. That's great. So I'm trying to think of other things that we wanted to talk about. Obviously we talked about guns. We've talked about favorite species to hunt.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite story that you want to tell? I mean, we've talked about successful hunts.
Oh boy!
Any good failures you want to share?
I can honestly say this is something I kind of thought about when you emailed me the things to ponder.
Yep.
As far as failures, this is a good one. I'd never say I ever failed at hunting. I've come home empty-handed a lot, but we always learn something, and we always kind of figure something out. My wife and son and I did, for example, a squirrel hunting day in Townsend. And, we didn't even see a squirrel in the 3 hours we were out there. But we ended up coming across this huge patch of wild Concord grapes, which was amazing.
That's great.
So where else can you happen to just walk? You're not going to find that in your living room. Nope. You know what I mean? So you spend a day hunting and you go out there and you find these grapes, and we brought them home and made a whole bunch of jam out of it. So you always learn something. Something always happens. So I never would say I failed. You just come home empty-handed every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
But as far as a favorite story, boy, I'd have to go on the funny side.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the turkey I harvested, and I've told a few people this one. That whole trick where we made the calls. It was a buddy of mine that we deer hunt with. I took him as my guest in there, and we worked the whole morning and had an awesome morning. Moved a whole flock of turkeys about 150 yards across the drop zone in the middle of the base, but they just didn't want to commit to that last, 20, 30 yards, and we felt comfortable shooting them. So, it was one of those learning things where we learned that the call was working, So that's when we switched over to driving down the dirt roads and just making a call and see what answered. Got the answer, threw the truck in the woods to hide it, set the blind out, set the decoys out, and my buddy said he had to take a whiz. So he turns around to go behind the blind to take a whiz, and I had my left foot in the blind, and two toms rushed the decoys that fast. I had to snap shoot my first turkey, so I just picked up the gun and took it, scared the heck out of him, and he's like, "What the heck happened?" I said, "I just shot my first turkey." So, in my whole life, I spent watching turkey videos and stuff and dreaming about this. It's going to come in quiet, and you're going to get the bead on his head, and everything's going to be perfect. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So he blames missing his first turkey on his enlarged prostate.
Well, next year, you'll have to take him back, and you'll have to go piss behind the blind, and
Exactly. I'll have to pay him back and let him have the first shot at it. But I guess that's kind of again, you learn something every time. You see all these videos and how things always you have in your mind how they're going to work, and sometimes it's just like, oh crap, it just happened. You know what I mean? It happens a totally different way.
That and that's similar to the doe I embarrassingly missed at about 45 yards this year. Was I looked down at my book, I looked up, I was like, that's interesting. That stick kind of looks like a deer's leg. I looked down at my book, looked up, and was like, that's the biggest doe I've ever seen in my life. I mean, she had to be at least 120 pounds. She was enormous. And, I looked up, I looked down, I looked back, I did a double take. I was like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And then I remembered that I had a 12-gauge shotgun in my hand, and I did my level best.
You might want to take a shot at it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I've literally spent all week trying this. I might as well do what I came to do.
Yeah,
that's great.
And we all miss. I'm not gonna, I've had, I'd say, minor success hunting. I would call it. But yeah, I've had my share of misses too. I missed a deer 3 years ago, a decent buck too, and it was maybe 25, 30 yards. During muzzleloader season, and I chalk it up to lack of patience on that one. Yeah. He was staring straight at me, and I'm saying, I can make that shot right in the chest, and I totally shanked the shot. Clean miss, which was good, but again, you learn something every time. Even, some people call that a failure. I learned something.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You learn that patience. Wait for him to turn broadside,
It's true. So I just got my first muzzleloader this year, and I can't wait to take it out. What brand and model do you take out?
I use, and again, I'm on that whole bread and butter, tool thing. Thompson Center Impact. I spent $179 on the two of them that I own at the end of the season, and they've worked great for us. Yeah, very accurate. I can put 3 rounds touching to 50 yards with open sights once I figured out, what load to use.
That's awesome.
And that's part of the fun of muzzleloading. You go to the range and you spend, a few hours, and you're basically you're your own reloader. You know what I mean? Working out the powder charge and the weight of the bullet and all that. It's a lot of fun, actually.
What I have the exact same one. I'm doing it's 100 grains of what is it?
The 777 pellets. Is that what you're using?
It's a white Pirate X load. It's not 777. It's like white heat, white hot, something like that.
Yeah, I've seen those before too. Yep.
And I think it's a 250 grain. Sabo Shockwave. Yep.
I found the Shockwaves worked pretty good, but I switched over to I think it's called the Super Glide Sabo, and it actually worked out a little better for me, tighter group.
Okay.
So it's kind of fun. You never you buy a few different kinds, and I take my son to the range and we kind of mess around with the different loads and kind of figure out what you get the tightest group with,
Yeah, it's part of the adventure, right? And you
part of the charm, exactly.
And you have an absolute drop dead. I mean, you're not going to take something untested into the field with you. So, right. In Massachusetts, you can start hunting with a muzzle loader the first day of shotgun season, I guess.
Yep. So, you don't need an LTC to have them in Mass, and you can get 6 to 7 weeks out of the deer season all with a muzzle loader.
Yeah. So I think, personally, my plan this year is I'm hoping against hope to make it up to Maine, do a little hunting there for a couple of days.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Because their muzzleloader opens before our shotgun season.
Yep.
And then I have the week after Thanksgiving off, and the week between Christmas and New Year's. So I'm going to take a
Well,
shot.
you better go get some deer then.
Yeah,
You got the 2 best weeks.
I'm in
Yep.
deep, deep trouble. Like, I think I'm going to have to take up golf more seriously if I can't get it done.
Well, sometimes you just like I said, you manage the expectations and see what happens.
Exactly, exactly. I'm finally figuring out. I call them my woods, but the woods of the property that I hunt, and you know, it's definitely been a learning process.
Yep.
It's little by little, day by day, year by year, and the spot that I had picked out that was perfect. In my mind, it was absolutely the place where I was going to have a deer broadside at 25 yards. I hunted 4 days last year, and the animal interactions I had were a crow taking a very large uh, dump on me, and a red squirrel running up my knee and mean mugging me for 2 or 3 minutes,
Man.
and then yelling at me, and running off. That was the sum total of 4 days.
Uh, yeah, but you know what? Taking a gun for a walk in the woods is a heck of a lot better than anything else, I think.
Absolutely, I agree 100% with you. So we're winding down. We kind of reaching the end of I promised you about 45 minutes of conversation, and I want to keep to that because obviously it's
I got all night.
well, the baby's not crying upstairs, so I'm gonna try to steal a little bit of happy baby time.
There you go. Don't blame you.
Anything you wanna impart to anybody, to the audience before we ring off for the night?
I would just say if you got kids that are 10, 11, 12 years old, and you have any aspiration of trying it, just try it. Take the class. Obviously, everyone has to take that hunter ed course, and you'll learn a ton of that.
Mm-hmm.
And start. I'd say start with squirrel. Start with that, and you'll have some good success, and you'll learn how to spend some time in the woods and have fun, and get in touch with where food comes from. That was kind of a cool thing with my son as well, for him to see that process.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't freak him out at all.
That's great.
As far as field dressing and all that. So it's a great way to teach some skills and spend some time together.
Awesome. Jim, thank you so much for making the time to come on and talk to me. Let's plan to connect after deer season and compare notes on how we did.
That is actually a good idea.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Cool. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks a lot.
I really appreciate the time.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Hey everyone, it's Andrew from Neophyte in the Woods. Just popping in real quick. Wanting to do a quick kind of bumper out here. We here at Neophyte in the Woods and the Change Your POV Network do this all out of the goodness of our hearts. We legitimately love and are passionate about the subjects about which we speak. However, that doesn't mean that we're not absorbing some costs. And one of the ways we're trying to address the overhead costs associated with putting out these podcasts is to do Patreon. And you can find a link to it right down at the bottom in the kind of the episode show notes on our website. If you could donate anything that you're able to support us and help us get this content coming out to you, it would be very much appreciated. There are tiers of membership from $1 all the way up to 10, and you can donate more than that. For our backers, our Patreon patrons, we do offer some unique content. We've been doing weekly shows where we do a live stream and we talk about a quote on Mondays. It's normally right around 8 p.m. Eastern. There's also some other cool rewards, including the level at which I back at $10 a month. You can actually get, believe it or not, a signed autographed picture of our fearless leaders, Bennett and Eddie. It really changed my life. It sits actually right up above the computer where I record all this stuff. I take it with me when I go hunting. I take it with me when I go fishing. I take it with me when I go to work. It goes everywhere with me. Some people have an EDC pocket knife. I have an EDC picture of Bennett and Eddie. I would really strongly suggest you back us and keep the good work that we're doing coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. Thanks for leaving us reviews on iTunes. And we'll talk to you next week.